All right, welcome everybody to the first Magento public GraphQL demo. We're excited to talk to you guys today and present our work that we've been doing, and excited to get some feedback from the community so that we can make our product better. Let's do a round of introductions here in the room so you guys get to know us a little bit. My name is Misha Kotov. I'm product manager for this track.
I'm Eric Bohannon. I'm an engineer working on GraphQL.
I'm Alex Paljaros, and I'm architect for GraphQL track.
I'm Christian Partik. I'm a software engineer for Magento.
And I'm Deepti Tampi. I'm the QA for this team.
And we're actually missing one who is our tech writer, and his name is Kevin Harper. You can see his work on the DevDocs web portal. So I'm going to do a quick intro before we dive into the actual demo of kind of where we stand, and do a little intro of GraphQL. You guys that are joining us today, I'm sure have probably deep knowledge of what GraphQL is, but just in case there's somebody on the call who maybe is new to this technology, I want to do a quick intro to what it is and why we are interested in this technology here at Magento. Just for the future reference, as you guys have questions today, I probably would like to handle that via the chat of the Zoom conference client. So just paste your questions in there. We'll try to answer everything. We do have a lot to show today, so if we can't get to something, we can continue the conversation on Slack or elsewhere, but we'll get to the feedback channels as well. So I'll jump right into it. What is GraphQL? GraphQL is a query language that was developed by Facebook back in the day. It was used internally for a while before they decided to open it up to the public. It's been growing quite a bit and getting a ton of adoption. It can be thought of as an alternative to REST and other kind of web services. It's a very convenient technology to improve developer experience for those that do a lot of work on the front end. And the main benefit is that you're able to define the structure of the data that you want, and you get that data and only that data back from the server. So request data equals the response data, like you see in this quick example here. The technical benefits are quite a lot. These are some of the main ones. Typically, you can accomplish more in one API call to GraphQL than you can, for example, in comparison with REST. The developer gets exactly and only the data that they need, so you save kind of on the overhead of the payload going over the network traffic. So normally it's a bit snappier than REST. There are a couple other advantages of built-in features like documentation and deprecation. So because everything is strongly typed and everything you want is part of the schema, knowing that ahead of time kind of brings you those benefits of documentation and things like where you can validate the syntax of a query before even sending it to the server. It can be validated on the client, etc. And introspection, of course, while you're writing the query, you know what is available, what you can write. It has a nice autocomplete feature and a lot of graphical tools. There's been a proliferation of just tooling in general around GraphQL lately that help the developers do their work faster and more efficiently. So I want to do a kind of an overview of where our current project is currently at. Our task, we set out to create a storefront API in GraphQL. So this is any kind of admin actions or interactions are out of scope for now. It's not to say that we can't tackle those later, but this is where we started. We kind of wanted to build a foundation on which developers can build front-end experiences. So we started with products. We built out support for all product types, plus the ability to search, sort, and filter. We'll demo a lot of this later on in the session. We also built kind of a basic customer authentication mechanisms here. We are starting to work on beginnings of Query API, which is it's a lightweight and flexible data retrieval layer in an effort to kind of increase performance of our GraphQL queries. And then the API coverage itself is meant to be expanded later. So again, we started with products, and we wanted to see if we can, do things like render product details page or a category page very product-focused experiences. And then we can later expand the API coverage to start rendering things like my account page, parts of checkout and order placement flows, etc. And we certainly have intentions of doing that. As far as the code quality as it stands today, the team is very much still in development, but we felt like the quality is coming together enough to where we can start exposing this publicly, and we want to have developers start playing around with this and providing feedback. We want to leave ourselves enough runway to kind of be able to react to whatever feedback we receive from you guys, so that we can obviously build a better product together. As far as resources, we've got some docs currently already published on docs.magento.com. The first kind of iteration of what we've built, so this is meant to be expanded as well, and we have like I said, tech writer that'll be working on that. As far as feedback like I said, for today's session, you guys can use the chat feature, and we'll try to capture those and answer them on the call. If not, we are active on Slack. If you guys are not familiar, there's a community engineering Slack channel that all of us in the room are where we're all present there, and that's Magento.com with 2 M's, eng.slack.com, and our channel is GraphQL. I think we pay attention to things like PWA channel as well, because these are all kind of interrelated. But with that, I will hand it off to the engineers in the room to show you guys the final product, or the current iteration of the product.
Okay, I will start.
Sure.
We should stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick overview of overall architecture, of high-level architecture, and where GraphQL's place is in our web APIs. And the document I'm showing you now is actually of docs, and it will be accepted soon. And if you have any desire, you can go and comment on this document before we accept it, and we are specifically designating some time for getting feedback from the community. I will paste a link to this document in the channel. So if you look at APIs that we have right now, we have REST and SOAP, and now we are adding GraphQL. And technical vision for web APIs is that REST and SOAP will still continue serving our admin integrations.
Hey, hang on a sec. I want to make sure that everybody can hear us. Oh no, they're just pointing out to the attendees to mute their mics. But I think I just muted everybody, so make sure you guys can still hear us. Yeah, we're unmuted. Okay.
Yeah, so basically, we have 2 types of integrations, mainly admin panel integrations, it's this box, and storefront integrations. So eventually, GraphQL is supposed to replace all REST APIs for storefront integrations, and REST and SOAP are still going to serve admin panel integrations. Then you can see that REST and SOAP are talking to service contracts and sometimes to models directly if you don't have service contract coverage enough. And GraphQL is going to talk to Query API, which is being built right now, and to service contracts in case of some persistence operations like mutations. Basically, if you add in something to cart or modifying customer account from storefront, so those will go through service contracts, but all queries should go to Query API. And then you can see that under Query API, we are going to have just our normalized storage, our primary data, and we also try to route as many queries as possible to our indexes to make requests faster. And here you can see that storefront is supposed to talk to GraphQL. It's possible that it will be via Ajax calls, or we even planning to expose PHP interface for making GraphQL queries. So let's say from your blog, you will be able to make GraphQL query. And I'm going to also point out a couple high-level requirements, like technical requirements for our GraphQL implementation. So first of all, we are going to support unlimited nesting, and you should be able to request any related entities. So for example, you can get like order, then order items, then products related to order items, and related products to those products. So basically, you should be able to request anything you want in one query. Fields filtration must be done by MySQL, and it should not be done on application layer as it is done now for service contracts when we fetch the whole data for the object and then we filter out, let's say, a couple of fields and return it to you. Third-party customizations will have to be done for both service contracts and GraphQL, because as you can see here, we don't have like shared point, so we get like different implementations on this side and on this side. So obviously you will have to have different customizations. GraphQL configurations must be declared in separate modules. So since we are following modularity, like, and for all new modules, we have extremely strict rules for modularity. So you will have, let's say, GraphQL for module A, and you have to create separate module for that. So you don't create configuration for GraphQL directly in module A. You create separate module, and then you create your GraphQL configuration in that module, and also you may create resolvers if necessary, GraphQL query resolvers. And as I mentioned earlier, GraphQL is primarily designed for storefront applications and one-page apps, and that's why we are going to support a cookie authentication there, and also just anonymous access. All GraphQL queries will return 200 HTTP status code, and the only exception is if there is some issue with schema generation, then you may see 500. And we are going to pass store code via headers. And another point that I would like to mention is about libraries that we are using to build our GraphQL on top of. And actually, this is Webonics GraphQL PHP Library, and according to our investigation, this is probably the most production-ready library. I'm not sure it's production-ready yet, actually, because its version is 0.9, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, it's 0.11 at the moment. But still, this is the most solid version that we have written for PHP, and also it is implementation of the same library which exists for JavaScript and for other languages. And the only drawback of this library, I believe, is that it has poor documentation at the moment. But we are trying to mitigate this by like separating third-party implementations from having dependencies on this library directly. So that's it from my side. Like, any questions at this point?
Haven't seen anything in.
Okay, and I will paste a link to this technical vision pull request to our channel. I mean, to the meeting channel.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay. I will be talking about the, let's see, what am I talking about? The schema and how to declare it, how we are using resolvers. I'll show you the products query that we are using, and also how we handle attributes and exceptions. So first off, with the schema, we have, as you can see here, a products query, customer query, custom attribute metadata, which is essentially getting front-end types from the back-end attributes via their attribute codes and entity type combinations. That's a test thing that we have, so we're testing, that's good. And then a URL resolver, but today specifically I'll be talking about the products query because it has the most robust implementation currently. So in it we have 5 arguments, which gives you pagination, filtering, and search, as well as sort input. And I will show you how we go about declaring that. So inside of the GraphQL XML, which is what we are introducing for this product, is initially we have just the top level output type, which is query. And as you can see, that is always what you will be your entry point for any given GraphQL query on our endpoint. And on this query, we will add different subqueries. And in this case, this is products, which has a type of products. And as you can see, we declare all our arguments here, and we have documentation that isn't currently being shown on this page, but soon we'll have a actual description here where it says no description. We have not completed that functionality yet, though. And as you can see, we just have lots of declarations. I'll show you first just the actual product interface, which is the base fields that we use for all products. And you can declare fields in several different ways, including scalar, which is just going to be your traditional integer and string and whatnot. And we have things, as you can see, like ID, name, and SKU. And you can also declare scalar array output fields. And in this instance, we have category IDs, which will just give you a list of category IDs that the product belongs to. You can also have object output fields. And for this, we have product prices, which I can show you here is basically we have what you would expect to see with minimal price, maximal price, and regular price. And each of these has adjustments and amounts and a really good thing you would want from prices. And so this is just an interface. And with that interface, you have to declare a concrete type. And so a concrete type, the most basic one you can have is simple product. And as you can see, we also declared two other interfaces that simple product implements, which physical product interface simply gives you weight as a field. And so as you can see, we add these interface fields automatically by simply saying on the XML node that declares simple product by simply saying implements, and then we say which interfaces it implements. From here, we also have the customizable product interface, which this interface gives you all of your product options that you could possibly want. And we also implement strict typing for it instead of having just generic JSON objects with all fields. So with customizable field option, for instance, you have a customizable field value as your value, which has very specific things for it. And all the other ones also contain type-specific information rather than being a generic object that contains all fields for all of them. And so essentially, we do all the merging automatically for these type declarations. And if you were to do it wrong, there would be helpful error handling that would give you reasons why it's not generating the schema correctly. And we hope to also improve that in the future just to make it more robust. But and as you can see here, this is just an introspection query, which gives you access to your GraphQL endpoints schema. And you can get all sorts of information about your type system here, including getting it about the top level query and so on and so forth. Now I will show you usage of our products endpoints. Let me uncomment all this. Oops. There we go. Oh, there it is. I don't think I missed one. Oh. That's not good. There we go. very good UI. Okay. These things down here that I have are actually named fragments, which are useful if you want to separate different fields for different types from your main query to make it a little bit cleaner. So as you can see, I have things like bundle fields, which are specific to bundle product, and all of the customizable options I showed you earlier, and so on and so forth. And it keeps my query a lot cleaner, which allows me to read it much easier, and I can know, like, okay, these are configurable, these are customizable, and all that good stuff. So first off, I'll just show a basic search for blue tea. I have sample data installed. And it'll take a second. And so as you can see here, we have a variety of information that I requested, including all the media gallery entry information, including the file, the type, what kind of content you can expect. And media gallery information also has video content inside of it too, if you have a video. And it has all the same stuff as the actual type or content as well. And as you can see here, we happen to pull back a configurable product, which normally with our REST query, you would have to take the configurable product links, which would just be simple product IDs, and then have to go query the server again. But we provide all simple product information that is available under the product interface and simple product implementation under configurable product links in one call. So that's a really useful functionality right there. And as you can see, we have our price with our currency, minimum and maximum, and we have a list of all the products that match my search term. And so now to show some of the various product types we have implemented, which includes grouped, which is what I'm about to show you. And as you can see, under grouped, we have something called items, which basically gives us all of our product items, and we can go and look inside the schema. Oops. Oh. And see exactly what that items field contains. And so as you can see, we have quantity and position. So this particular item doesn't have any quantity, but it is position 0, so it should go first in the product listing. And we also have a field called product that gives us all of the product fields that we could expect from the product interface. And once again, normally before in REST, you would have to query all of the children products separately from the main product search. And now we are able to just grab it all in one go. And same goes for configurable products, which I can just show you the fragment that it uses. Configurable product links, we get all in one go. Same with bundled, which has items with a SKU for each item and all the options associated with that, as well as the product. Downloadable gives you all of your expected downloadable information on top of the product information that you get from the REST endpoint. And let's see, what else do I have to talk about?
Resolvers and attributes.
Okay. I'll start with attributes. So for attributes, as you can see, any attribute you would expect from a product are all available on the base as a base field. And so formerly, we would do custom attributes and extension attributes inside of their own containers in a REST call. And all other EAB attributes, actually, I'm not sure, would they be in a container in REST too? Alex?
Custom attributes?
Or EAB specifically?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so all of our attributes used to be in different containers on a REST call, and it would be up to the client to go through and iterate through all those and figure out how they fit. But now we have our own implementation of this, where specifically for our product endpoint, we have explicitly declared all extension attributes and EAB attributes, where for the custom attributes, we actually have our own attribute reader. So The reader that takes in this config information and resolves it to a schema also uses this attribute reader, which for products specifically, and catalog. And it goes in and dynamically grabs all custom attributes that might be associated to a catalog product. And so you can see here, these are actually all custom attributes, including color, and this Aaron recommends, which is funny. And all of these are all custom attributes specifically, and they get auto-added basically when the schema is generated. But as I was saying earlier, though, extension attributes are not automatically generated, and they must be, or in our implementation, they are declared explicitly in the GraphQL.xml. So for instance, for configurable products, obviously your configurable product links and options are normally extension attributes, and we have explicitly declared those here. However, that is not to say that you couldn't write your own reader that will go and create automation to grab all of the extension attributes dynamically. And same goes for EAB attributes. And now for exceptions. So in our, I guess the easiest way to do this is do this. So we ported some functionality from our exception handling framework to our, let's see, just let me generate a fake exception here. Okay, so this should pull back a error message from our endpoints. Because with the custom attribute metadata, we have ways of basically saying if you don't have a entity type, it should throw an exception for GraphQL. And as you can see, we got an internal server error, which actually is not what I expected. That's interesting. Okay, let's try this. Okay, so let's say I were to remove entity type, which it is required for the custom attribute metadata endpoint. So now we have a very specific message saying missing entity type for the input attribute code SKU. And we have a category that allows you to bucket the message and handle it on the front end. In this case, it's GraphQL input because our input is invalid. And it also gives you a path to where in your request structure it happened. And obviously for us, it happened in the first item of the array that we called for. And if you were to get, say, a localized exception, which I'm just going to mimic something going wrong during schema generation. Oops. It will give you a masked error, which will just be internal server error. While in production mode. Now, if you were to go into developer mode, though, you would get a stack trace as well as for if it is a localized exception, you will also get a specific debug message field that will give you the full exception message. And yeah, so that's pretty much.
There are a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, there. Cool. Let me look. Oh, I'm not part of the meeting. What are the questions?
Well, I don't know. So one is, we've got a question from Max. How types declared in GraphQL XML configuration are compatible with types used in PHP code of a module? Do you have any convention, for example, for consistency with old REST Web API?
We actually, well, I'll let you answer it actually.
So basically, all these declarations which we have in GraphQL, this is how we expect storefront applications to work with specific entities. And we are designing those independently from existing REST and trying to optimize it for storefront applications. So basically, you shouldn't expect any correlation between GraphQL types and existing like service contract data interfaces, which are used in REST.
Cool. And then the second question from Matthew was around testing and what kinds of attributes we test with. So I guess part of your question is, are you testing with large attribute sets? And that I'm interpreting that to mean just scale-wise. And we will and should test with just huge attribute sets because we know those are in the wild, and that gets more performance. And I think the second half of your question, if I'm reading it right, is about complexity of the attributes. He's saying in the wild, oftentimes there can be a lot, the attribute sets can be a lot more complex than standard options in vanilla Magento, especially in certain like industry segments.
It's probably just about the size and quantity of attribute sets.
Okay. Yeah. As far as complexity of attributes, I think we support everything.
I don't think it's about complexity of attribute sets. It's about complexity of the instance.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah. If it's around scale, we do run performance tests today. I can't speak to how large those attribute sets are. I don't know if you know, Chris. But we should be doing some testing on large scale sets as well.
So we have divided into small set, medium set, and large, and we are testing with the small set so far. And we want to get to the large part with introduction of the next iteration of.
Yeah. So we haven't yet, but we're planning on it. I guess is the short answer. Okay, awesome. Let's see. Did you do resolvers?
Oh, no. Sorry about that. So
that's your last topic.
Yeah, I will show you now a resolver. So we declare our resolvers inside of the GraphQL.xml where the field is declared. So now you wouldn't declare it on the type, you would actually declare on the field. And so our resolver for products is this class right here. And it implements a specific interface that our library that we're using to create the GraphQL server will basically call a callback that will then invoke this resolve function and do any sort of data fetching and arguments processing and transformation of the data you get back from your storage to fit the GraphQL structure. And then it will return it in that structure. And as you can see here, this is what you would traditionally expect from our products type, which is total count, page info, and items. We also have something called type resolvers, which take the interfaces that you are requesting and using the data that's returned by the resolver, it will determine what kind of concrete type should be passed back to the response. And in this case, I'm trying to find it. There it is. So here's our product interface type resolver. And as you can see, it goes in and checks the type ID in our data. And if it's simple, it will return a simple product. If it's virtual, it will return virtual product. This will be more configurable in the future, but for now we have just simple if statements. And we also have this in a composite that's implemented across bundle, grouped, configurable, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, let us know in the meantime if you guys have any questions around the resolvers part. Otherwise, we're going to move on to some other topics here.
Okay. So I'm going to be demonstrating the customer part, and I'll be sharing my screen. This requires a authentication from the customer part, and we have a payload that looks like this. So we have demonstrated products. We have the customer part, which has a schema like this. So you would be able to, for the front end purposes, you can query your own customer, right? You cannot query other customers because this is intended for front end, and there's no admin super user that can query other customers. So you can have access to all your information as you will see it right now on a front end. Plus, there we trimmed out some secure fields that identify your token or stuff like that that won't be exposed to the front end. And also your addresses and which one is intended for billing or shipping or and so forth. All right, so far this authentication works in two ways, same as the web API part, the REST. Of course, REST will support more, but we actually support just session and token, right? So what is session? Let's say I'm on a front end right now. So I'm logged in with my customer. I will be able to actually query my own customer without providing a token at all. So this graphical tab from Chrome is very useful because it can actually work in the same session as your browser. I understood that Chrome would actually take out plugins as being a tab. So so far this still works. So I can query my own customer. As you can see here, I have default billing address and default shipping, which is ID 2 and 3. Of course, we could have easily put is default shipping or is default billing here as a repetitive field. So we have a tendency to modify the standard web API structure in GraphQL. As you see, we moved a lot of fields around, and we will continue to do so. So you guys can have a better API to consume and have all the data at the fingertips without doing a lot of queries, or as GraphQL is more fields to be able to minimize the number of I/O operations that you do for rendering front end. Okay, so let's say I will log out from my user, right? And I will try to actually query the same customer. I won't be able to, and I will be getting a message from GraphQL, which is the user message. It's not a debug message that, okay, well, there's something going on and I don't have enough authorization. Now, the way you can pass a token, and I know if you're familiar with Postman, and I have a Postman the same as a tab, you can request through API a customer token. All right. So you use this endpoint, you create your token, you get it back through post, and yet then you have this hashtag or whatever key this is, and you can use it in the headers, something like that, as an authorization bearer, and you put this token here. Okay. You can use Postman, but it becomes kind of ugly because the raw payload looks like this, and it becomes very unusable for a developer that just wants to use this software, right? Unfortunately, the tab graphical does not support an overriding of any headers so far. It has like query variables, and you can probably see if you do an inspection, like what is the payload given, right? So here on the network, you can see here, well, this will be the payload. I will copy it and I will alter the headers. But we found a application that is compiled for Mac or Windows that can actually support all this stuff, and it's graphical, but as an app. regardless from Chrome. So you have a nice interface here, similar to the tab one, but you can actually edit headers, right? So I'll put this authorization bearer. I would query my own customer without having a session, right? This is useful for maybe testing, is useful for manual testing, is useful for not having a session, right? And if I get it wrong, right? Let's say I edit this and I put the wrong bearer, I shouldn't be having access to my own customer, right? And as you see, on customer, there are no arguments, right? You cannot query another customer's ID, right? And this is intended to be this way. Okay, so this is the part where we demonstrated the customer will proceed to store. What store-specific queries are is that, okay, well, I will have a product here, and in my Magento installation, we will have this product, which has been assigned to 2 stores. So I created my second store, and I have one name here. So you have specific values for these stores. Some of them are store view, some of them are for website intended, and so forth. So I just have just double back like this name, and the second one, I just have another name. And this goes for, I don't know, anything that can be scoped for store, right? Right. So I will edit my headers, and we added the store second, right? If you don't specify this store, it will actually take the default one. So I'm expecting the payload to actually come with the second name that was intended for this, right? I think you got a question there. So if I put, and this is store codes, this is not IDs or anything, right? If I put here the default, I would get, oh, probably didn't save it. I will get the other name. And if I don't put it at all, of course, I will get the default. All right. And all right. So the next thing that I will demonstrate is actually pricing. We modified the pricing structure as it was in the API, and it would look something like this. In the API, you would have a float price, which is the catalog price. For this purpose, we joined the rendering API with the catalog API, where is it intended for rendering purposes. And in this case, you would just have like a minimal price, maximal price, and regular price. Now, for simple products, this is not very useful because most of the times maximal price with minimal price will be equal, and you might have a regular price, right? And to demonstrate that, we would probably do a regular price here, a special price, as it called in the admin. Mm-hmm. It was 34, so it has to be lower than the actual price from the catalog to show up. And we can see it here. Now, it gets more complicated where you have, let's say, a bundled product or a configurable. And for bundled product and configurable, you can see more usages like, okay, well, I will have a minimal price here. I'll have a maximal price, which is like the difference between the minimum configuration and maximum configuration you can have. And you can also have a regular price. Of course, here I didn't specify it. And then you have this adjustments. Notice that every amount here is composed out of value and currency, and this is about a thing we want to introduce. It's called the money object, which is I don't know. I've seen it in many systems, so we wanna port it to this API, which can contain also adjustments. Let's say I configured a tax, so you would be able to see in the same object taxes, and if this amount is included, so you would know actually how to render this this pricing object. So you have all the information in one place, okay? And it's your choice whether to query the proper things you need for rendering. Okay, for testing purposes, as I told you, we did the token parse so we can easily do a way to identify a customer or alter headers to be able to test our payloads, right? So we have, let's say, this test for customer. And this test for customer, its usage is actually quite simple. It's similar to Web API. So you just set your header and you get, you set your payload, right? And you can actually get a response, and then you do your assertions. Very similar to the Web API. It's actually more simple because Web API has SOAP, has REST. You can configure more stuff in this header map, and it's more clear. But I think for this purpose, it will be actually far more simpler. And we did provide some tests for all the payloads that you've seen so far, for the, well, we like to call endpoints, but they're actually fields that have some arguments. Okay, so the last thing that I'm gonna demo is the URL resolver. And this is a feedback that we received from our PWA team that is doing some framework that will make usage of this. Basically, it's about URL rewrites. You would have to transform, we have to locate from your URL what product you might want to actually query, right? And
I think it's wider than that, right? It's what type of a page are you, and what is the ID of the entity that you're trying to fetch.
Yeah, and also what is the layout for that page? What is selected layout?
Yeah. But so far we just identify products. Yep. So we will widen this this feature. Basically, you have to. If I copy this here in the front end. It tells me that, well, this actually, it's another URL rewrite that has been renamed, and I renamed on purpose. So regardless if I rename this URL, and this is the current status, and what I show you here, it was the previous URL, it will still resolve to the actual entity. And if we look at the database, like how renames work, it doesn't matter if you query an old URL that doesn't exist anymore, it resolves to something that's current, it will still work in just one query. You don't have to follow the chain, and it's very easy to use. Mm-hmm. Okay, this concludes our current status of what we've done so far with GraphQL.
Okay, and also there are a couple questions and discussion actually in comments. And I would like to comment on a couple more items. Eric is responding to most of the items, but I still would like to mention why it is not a good idea to auto-generate GraphQL endpoints or GraphQL queries based on service contracts. And the main reason is because we will lose performance benefits in this case. In case if you want to fetch only a couple fields, you will still be fetching the whole entity using service contracts. And then you will be just filtering out a couple fields on application layer. And there was also a question about aggregating results from third-party systems into our GraphQL response. And I believe there are two options. One option is already mentioned, using Apollo client, if it's okay for you, if it fits your needs. And second option, if you can declare custom field on your entity, you can write custom resolver, which will just pull data from any third-party service you need. And then it can be reused from backend as well. Like you will be able to use this as a service in your PHP application, not just from JavaScript client.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else you guys want to bring up around the discussion that's taking place? No. Okay, so there's one last thing that I wanted to point out, which is the documentation that's been written already. If you guys could just go to devdocs.magento, there's a little banner here that points out that we've got some pre-release docs on GraphQL. So if you open that up, Kevin's done a good job of writing some content here that goes over a lot of the themes and concepts that were shown here today. So I would encourage you guys to use that as your first point of reference for resources and concepts around the implementation that we showed here today. I won't go into every topic here, but just know that this is here. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out was that all of this is already in the 2.3 public branch right on GitHub. So if you guys want to get hands-on and actually go see what the code looks like, feel free to check that out and use that as a reference for conversations. Again, this is what was shown here today is just the current state. We would love to get ideas and feedback from the community so that we can improve our product before the release. We still got some time to kind of be able to react, and we've got our own plans as well. Like I said, Core API is probably the main thing that we've been working on. That's between now and release, but we would love to incorporate any meaningful feedback that you guys suggest to us. So again, encourage you to come talk to us on the Slack channel.
You can paste the channel reference.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to do that. Let me see if this works. Magento, come and I think this is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll paste that in the chat here. And it'll be the GraphQL channel. Would love to have a conversation going. It was good discussion, good questions from you guys. So we're excited to get this out and get this further improved. With that, this concludes our demo. Thanks for attending. Thanks for everybody's time today. It was good to meet everybody. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Good job, everyone.
Woohoo!